Have you ever felt as if you're living someone else's life? Not the life of your potential self, but one shaped by procrastination, fear, and the repetition of self-destructive habits. We often believe that change takes time, but the truth is this: all it takes is a single, resolute decision and 7 days to become someone so transformed that even your closest ones might not recognize you. This is no miracle. This is the deliberate reconstruction of the self, grounded in Stoicism, an ancient philosophy whose strength has never faded with time. Day 1. Breaking the old self, a journey that begins in ruins. True transformation never begins by adding. It begins by removing what no longer serves growth, what makes us weak, and above all, removing the old self we've grown far too comfortable with. The first day of this 7-day Stoic journey was a declaration of war against your own past, an uncompromising decision to shatter the old ego and make room for something stronger. We are obsessed with the idea of improving, upgrading, optimizing, but deep down, the root of our stagnation lies in the very foundation we've built upon: our self-definition. If your old self is built on fear, excuses, procrastination, low self-worth, and the fear of failure, then all efforts at growth are nothing more than painting over a rotting wall. It will collapse sooner or later. Stoicism cares nothing for the paint. It demands demolition and rebuilding. And that only happens when you dare to face yourself. No excuses, no embellishments, no detours. The first question you must ask is, what am I still carrying that's keeping me from moving forward? In the quiet of this first morning, sit down and write. No need for eloquence, only honesty. Write down the habits you know are sabotaging you: mindless scrolling, staying up without reason, putting off what matters, blaming circumstances, talking more than doing. Write down the toxic thoughts you nurture. I'm not good enough. I will fail. Others have it easier than I do. Write down the excuses you often use to avoid change. I'm tired. It's not the right time. At least I tried. None of these are you. They are merely the outdated version you've mistaken for yourself. Once those words are laid bare on paper, you'll see the old self isn't as solid as you believed. It only existed because you never truly put it under scrutiny. Like light dissolves darkness, bringing your ego into awareness weakens its hold. And that is the first step to freedom. But seeing isn't enough. You must take a symbolic action, a declaration to yourself that says, I will not live as before. Burn the page, bury it, tear it to shreds and cast it to the wind. The act holds no magic, yet it marks a clear psychological shift. It tells your subconscious, a new chapter begins now. Stoicism is a philosophy of action, not sentiment. So on this very first day, you don't stop at realizing who you've been. You decide what no longer has a place. No one else can make that call for you. True freedom doesn't come from having many options. It comes from ruthlessly eliminating the ones that weaken you. The old self will try to return, whispering, just relax, just this once. You can start tomorrow, and every time, you must remember that version is the reason you had to begin again. In Epictetus's view, no one can harm us unless we permit it. But what he emphasized more deeply was this: we destroy ourselves daily through weak choices, by repeating old patterns, by refusing responsibility. So breaking the old self isn't an inspiring option. It's the only way forward. There's a strange paradox. The more we cling to the old self, the more exhausted we become. It's like heavy armor worn for years, never removed. When you begin to strip it off, layers of fear, insecurity, judgment, you'll feel lighter, freer, and in a way, closer to your true self. Not a new person, but the real one. buried under psychological rubble your whole life. This is not easy, which is why so few dare to do it. Most want change without losing anything, but no rebirth comes without pain. No fire burns without consuming the old, and no freedom is gained without radical surrender. The first day does not demand perfection. It only asks for brutal honesty, to stare at what's holding you back, without judgment, without hiding, just presence. And then you act. You make a clear declaration, not to anyone else, but to yourself. I am no longer who I was. From this day forward, I act as the person I choose to become. Real change begins there. Not with a workout, not with a 90-day plan, but with an irreversible inner decision to break the old self, so life can begin again, this time on your terms. Day 2. Rebuilding the body. The body is the dwelling place of the will. You cannot train the mind while neglecting the body. Stoicism has never separated the intellectual life from the physical one. On the contrary, it sees the body as the clearest expression of discipline, self-mastery, and inner strength. A disciplined mind cannot live in a disordered body. A strong will cannot endure in a weak, decaying biology. That's why the second day of the transformation journey begins not with lofty ideas, but with the most honest starting point: the body. We live in an age of abundant convenience and depleted resilience. Everything is designed for ease. Food is a few taps away. Transportation is always available, and few of us face harsh living conditions on a daily basis. Yet in this comfort, the body grows lazy, the mind grows soft, and the will erodes. Stoicism rejects the easy path. It advocates the opposite, a deliberate conditioning of the body as an essential part of fortifying the spirit. The body is a tool, but also a battleground. It reflects our inner power most directly. A person disciplined in movement, nutrition, and rest cultivates self-control, resilience, and a strong response to adversity. Conversely, one who yields easily to physical cravings will struggle to remain grounded in mental trials. Therefore, the second day is not simply about exercise or healthy eating. It's a declaration of intent. I am training for what life will throw at me. Start with simplicity. Move the body. There is no need for complex routines or expensive gear. What matters is consistency and ritual. A physical practice must occur daily, at a fixed time, like a sacred appointment. Whether it's 15 minutes of weights, a 30-minute run, or a simple yoga flow, this becomes an act of self-directed will. Repeated over time, this act reshapes the nervous system, builds sustainable habits, and reinforces a sense of control over your life. Stoicism does not glorify physical strength for its own height. It does not chase records or appearance. Physical training is not for show. It is a way to sharpen the will through the body. Every time you lift heavier, every time you finish a lap, when your muscles beg you to stop, the will is forged to rise above fatigue and discouragement. In the harshness of physical effort, reason is taught to stand firm, no matter how loudly weakness protests. Beyond movement, another essential element of physical renewal is food. The Stoic does not eat for pleasure, but for clarity and strength. Eating is no longer indulgence. It becomes a tool with a clear purpose. Eliminating harmful substances, refined sugar, alcohol, fast food, fried fare, is the first step toward cleansing the body. A chaotic digestive system breeds a chaotic mind. Instead, choose whole, balanced, natural foods, not to lose weight or look good, but to refine the physical vessel that houses the spirit. Along with movement and nutrition, one often overlooked pillar is sleep. A person who cannot master their sleep, staying up aimlessly, snoozing through the morning, or scrolling before bed, will always begin the day foggy and unfocused. Stoicism demands alertness, not only in thought, but in biology. Sufficient disciplined sleep is the cornerstone of physical repair, mental recovery, and sustained clarity. Cold showers, a simple habit valued by modern Stoics, are another way to train the mind to face discomfort. When the body meets cold, its instinct is to retreat, but learning to remain in that discomfort by choice builds a crucial psychological muscle, resisting the urge to react impulsively when adversity strikes. Lessons like this, small as they may seem, when repeated, create a remarkable calm in the face of life's chaos. Stoicism also emphasizes reducing dependence on physical comfort. Voluntary discomfort, an ancient concept, reminds us not to become slaves to convenience. Skipping a meal to feel hunger, sleeping on the floor to feel lack, walking instead of driving to value effort. These are not self-punishments, but reminders that we can live simpler, freer, and stronger than we think. The body, in the end, is our only lifelong residence. It is not just a tool for labor. It is the first ground that must be cleared if one hopes to build a new life. A weak, sluggish body that is easily ruled by hunger or fatigue becomes the first physical barrier to mental clarity. Conversely, a resilient, active, clean body becomes a loyal ally of the will. Day 2 of the transformation is not merely about health. It is a test of commitment. Commitment to rising early to train, even in the rain. Commitment to eating clean, even when tempted by friends. Commitment to sleep on time, even when pleasure beckons. These small commitments, repeated daily, forge an inner pride, the kind born of self-mastery, hour by hour, step by step. No one needs to know you are changing. No need to post gym photos or brag about your meals. Those who walk the Stoic path understand that real evolution happens in silence, not for praise, not for attention, but for one reason only, because it is the right path. Day 3, upgrading the mind. Deprogramming the negative. The mind is the true battlefield of transformation. All external outcomes, our body, career, and relationships, are reflections of the inner state. You cannot build a strong life on a foundation of weak thinking. You cannot step into discipline, decisive action, or clear goals while your mind is crowded with negative, repetitive, and self-sabotaging thoughts. Day 3 is the moment to enter your inner control room, the place where your worldview, reactions, and choices are programmed, maintained, and regenerated every day. Stoic thought has long emphasized that what matters is not what happens, but how we interpret what happens. This interpretation, what the philosopher Epictetus called judgment, is the root of our emotions, the driver of our actions, and ultimately, the architect of our character. A person who cannot govern their own thoughts will always be a victim of circumstance. They may achieve temporary success, but eventually, they will be pulled down by the hidden beliefs they have never questioned. Upgrading the mind does not begin by learning something new. It begins by removing what no longer serves us. These are the negative inner dialogues, the harsh self-judgments, the unconscious phrases like, "I'm not good enough," "I always fail," "No one supports me," "I don't have time." These are not just words. They are silent commands sent to the mind, repeated until they become reality. On day 3, the first task is to become aware of the content that dominates your mental space. Journaling, a practice used daily by Marcus Aurelius, is a key tool. Write down the thoughts that appear most frequently, especially during stress, fatigue, or failure. Record your inner monologue when you make a mistake. Write your first reaction when someone criticizes you. Write what you believe your limitations are. Once these lines are brought into the light, you'll see that many truths in your head are nothing more than old programming, born from painful experiences, the voices of others, or simply psychological habits from adolescence. Next comes the process of dismantling and replacing. Stoicism does not encourage blind positivity. It teaches us to look reality in the face, but through the lens of reason, not emotion. When a negative thought arises, it's like, I can't do this. Instead of offering empty encouragement, confront it with logic. What evidence says I can't? Have I overcome something like this before? If others can, why can't I? This questioning not only disrupts the old thought loop, but also builds a foundation of proactive, rational thinking. One of Stoicism's core tools is the practice of premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of adversity. But its purpose is not to spread fear. On the contrary, it conditions the mind for hardship. When you visualize the worst-case scenario, rejection, failure, loss, and prepare your rational response to it, your mind learns to stay grounded rather than panic. If the worst happens, you are ready. If it doesn't, you gain peace in advance. Alongside this is the frequent reminder of memento mori, the truth that life is finite. This helps the mind let go of petty worries and trivial negative thoughts that slow us down. When each day is lived as if it might be your last, the mind begins to focus on what matters rather than being consumed by needless concerns. Another element that needs restructuring is how we perceive failure. A negative mind tends to equate the self with the result. If we fail, we are failures. If we're rejected, we are unworthy. Stoic thinking draws a clear distinction. Our essence does not lie in outcomes, but in rational and ethical action. A person who acts rightly, regardless of the result, is worthy of respect. In this way, the mind learns that failure does not define us. Our response to it does. Upgrading the mind also means filtering the information we take in. Every day we absorb thousands of messages from social media, news, others' words, and even our own inner voice. These messages either nourish or poison the mind. Therefore, we must cut out the noise. Negative news, meaningless entertainment, pointless conversation. Instead, choose to read, to listen to valuable content, to reflect, not for momentary inspiration, but to build a positive and intentional mental environment. Meditation, a practice often referenced by Seneca, also plays a vital role in mental upgrade. Not to empty the mind, but to observe its flow without being swept away, to witness emotion without reacting impulsively. Every minute spent in stillness is a minute training presence, teaching the mind to stand outside the storm and choose with reason, not instinct. Ultimately, upgrading the mind is a daily, relentless process, he says. There is no single awakening, after which everything changes forever. Each day is a new dialogue with the self. Each thought chosen, each internal phrase spoken, each time reason is chosen over emotion. That is a brick in building a new mental operating system. And in time, the transformation becomes undeniable, not because your appearance or lifestyle has changed, but because the way you speak, act, and show up in the world reflects an inner clarity, solidity, and calm that cannot be shaken. Day 4. Cultivating presence. Speak little, be heard by all. True strength is not always expressed through words. In many cases, it doesn't need to be spoken at all. Some people don't raise their voices, don't seek attention. Yet when they enter a room, every gaze turns toward them. Not because they try to be seen, but because they show up in a way that cannot be ignored. The 4th day of this transformation journey is not about proving yourself outwardly. It's about redefining how you show up in the world. Stoicism places little value on persuading others with words. Stoics do not argue to be right, nor do they seek validation through praise. Instead, they focus on becoming the kind of person no one can ignore, not because they speak well, but because they live well. In a world growing noisier by the day, where everyone fights to be noticed, the one who remains calm, in control, becomes the natural center of attention. A powerful presence begins with inner solidity. No body language can fake true confidence. No gaze can convince if the mind behind it is chaotic and insecure. Therefore, cultivating presence is not simply about learning communication techniques or improving appearance. It begins within, from how we perceive ourselves, and from a commitment to live in accordance with chosen values. A person with true presence knows who they are, what they stand for, and feels no need to explain themselves. When they speak, they are not seeking agreement, nor are they afraid of disagreement. Their words come from a place of stability, honed by reason, unshaken by passing emotion. And this cannot be developed through a few speech workshops or communication classes. It is the result of living in truth every single day. The essence of presence is the consistency between thought, word, and action. When someone speaks what they don't believe or acts against their own values, they lose conviction in their voice and clarity in their eyes. The listener may not consciously notice, but they'll feel something is off. Conversely, someone who lives aligned with their values doesn't need to say much. Their every word carries weight. Trust doesn't come from eloquence. It comes from living so authentically that speech becomes a natural extension of action. Body language is an essential element in communicating presence. In Stoicism, no one is encouraged to lower their gaze, avoid eye contact, or speak timidly. These are signs not of lacking skill, but of a mind not yet disciplined. An upright posture, focused gaze, steady breath, and deliberate movements are marks of self-command. Such a person does not need to shout to be heard. Often, their silence speaks more persuasively than any argument. Speaking less is also part of the process of building presence. In a conversation, the one who speaks the most is rarely the one who holds the most influence. True influence belongs to the one who knows when to speak and when not to. Well-timed silence is not weakness, but a sign of complete control over emotion and speech. Stoicism teaches that words must be chosen with the care of a drawn arrow. Once released, they cannot be taken back. Therefore, every word must be deliberate, constructive, clear, and purposeful. Another pillar of strong presence is the ability to observe and listen. A good observer understands more than the situation. They read emotions, reactions, and motives. They don't rush to respond, don't interrupt, don't dominate. They listen to understand, not to reply. And as a result, when they do speak, their words often conclude the conversation, not out of authority, but out of precision and enlightenment. Presence is also shaped by how we dress, care for ourselves, and manage our time. A person with presence is not sloppily dressed, is not late, and does not project disorder. Every small detail, from a pressed shirt, a focused gaze, to a well-timed nod, serves as a silent message of self-respect and respect for others. Attention to small acts creates the overall impression of someone who is reliable and grounded. In today's society, where attention is easily scattered by phones, notifications, and social media, someone who is fully present in each moment stands out. They don't look at their phone while talking, don't let their mind drift when others are speaking. They show up with their body, eyes, and attention. And that is what makes them memorable, respected, and sought after. Not because of anything spectacular they've done, but because they are unmistakably themselves, clear, grounded, and without pretense. Finally, a person with strong presence has learned to master their reactions. When insulted, they do not lash out. When provoked, they do not lose control. When praised, they are not inflated. And when criticized, they do not collapse. It is this ability to remain composed in all circumstances, sharpened through Stoic practice, that forms the invisible aura of safety, respect, and at times, awe. Presence cannot be memorized, nor can it be performed forever. It is the inevitable outcome of an inner life that has been purified, a lifestyle rooted in intention and self-discipline sustained over time. When you stop chasing the need to impress, you begin to impress. When you no longer seek attention, you start to attract it. And when you live in alignment with your core values, your presence becomes a living testament to that truth, whether or not you say a single word. Day 5. Relentless action. No motivation, still moving. The difference between those who live firmly and those who keep repeating failure does not lie in luck, intelligence, circumstance. It lies in the ability to act without hesitation, especially in moments without inspiration, without motivation, and without anyone pushing from behind. Day 5 in the transformation journey is the affirmation. Only action creates change, and action cannot depend on emotion. Stoic philosophy centers on rational action. All thought, reflection, and contemplation, if not translated into practical action, are deemed meaningless. Marcus Aurelius, one of Stoicism's foremost figures, once wrote in his journal, "Stop talking about what a good man is like. Be one." This is not a command meant to pressure, but a reminder to strip away the illusion that positive thinking is enough. Without action, there is no progress. Without action, there is no freedom. In reality, most people fail not because they lack knowledge or ability, but because they delay taking action. They wait until they feel ready. They look for the perfect moment, the right feeling, a spark of motivation. But the problem is this: that moment rarely comes, and even if it does, it quickly passes. Life does not reward those who wait for inspiration. It rewards those who act despite the absence of it. Stoicism teaches that motivation is unreliable. It is a fleeting emotion, like joy, anger, or sadness, and like all emotions, it comes and goes. If your entire growth strategy is built on motivation, every shift in mood will bring collapse. Instead, you must build the capacity to act from principle, not feeling. Acting without hesitation doesn't mean having endless energy. It means having already decided, this is what must be done. Practicing this begins with small things. Don't wait for inspiration to start your day. Begin your day by the schedule you've set. Don't wait for the perfect mood to begin your work. Begin and let focus come afterward. Action does not need to feel right. It only needs to begin. And the more you act, the more your mind is trained to function independently of fleeting emotional states. Procrastination is a sign of a weakened mind. It's not merely doing it tomorrow, but a psychological mechanism to avoid discomfort, fear of failure, or the pressure of completing something important. But each act of delay erodes self-respect. Every postponed task chips away at your trust in yourself. Stoicism sees overcoming procrastination as a core part of moral discipline. For one who cannot act when it's time, cannot live rightly. To act without hesitation, one must eliminate a common habit: overanalysis. People often stall because they spend too much time calculating, weighing, and comparing options without making a decision. They fall into action paralysis, frozen by too many possibilities. Stoicism teaches, if something is right and within your control, act on it immediately. More thinking won't improve the decision. It only weakens your will to act. A simple practice for this mindset is, whenever you're faced with a task you clearly know is beneficial, exercising, reading, cleaning, finishing a project, start within 5 seconds. No negotiation, no delay, just shift from thought to motion. Every time you do, you reinforce your trust in yourself, that you are a person of action, not empty intentions. The ability to act without hesitation is closely tied to the ability to endure discomfort. Most meaningful actions are not pleasant. Writing a hard email, walking into the gym, facing conflict, resisting temptation. If you wait until it feels easy, you'll wait forever. Stoicism treats facing discomfort as mental training. Each time you step beyond your comfort zone, you expand the borders of your capability. Action must also be grounded in ethics. Stoicism does not encourage impulsive or reckless deeds. Every action must serve a just purpose, not merely benefiting the self, but also avoiding harm to others. The Stoic acts because they have reasoned what is right, and once that is clear, they act without hesitation. Rational action is swift, not rash. Decisive, not thoughtless. Sustaining consistent action requires personal discipline systems. Successful people are not the ones who feel inspired every day. They are the ones who build systems that compel them to act regardless of mood. They follow fixed routines, honor firm commitments, maintain clean workspaces, and observe small rules they never break. This makes action an inevitable part of life, not a daily internal debate. At the core of this relentless action lies a key Stoic principle. Don't let anyone, not even yourself, delay what is right. Maybe you're not ready to change your whole life, but you are always ready to do one small thing right now, in line with your values. And those small, steady, deliberate actions, done without hesitation, create the unstoppable transformation no one can deny. Action is the final expression of character. People may think differently, speak differently, even believe differently, but action, especially when unseen, unrewarded, and uncompelled, reveals the truth of who we are. So day 5 is not just the next step in a transformation. It is a turning point. The moment you stop depending on motivation, stop being a victim of delay, and begin shaping reality with your own hands and will. Day 6, build a system. Do not rely on emotion. Sustainable change does not come from impulsive actions, bursts of enthusiasm, or emotionally charged declarations. It comes from a system, carefully designed processes, repeated consistently, and operating steadily regardless of mood. Day 6 of the journey is a strong reminder. If you want to live a purposeful life, you cannot continue acting based on fleeting emotions. You need a personal system, not perfect, but steadfast. Stoicism regards discipline as the backbone of an ethical life. But discipline cannot exist if each day begins with a debate over whether or not you act. When behavior still hinges on how we feel, progress will always be obstructed by emotional fluctuation. Therefore, we must build a personal system, something that replaces emotion, directs action, and maintains consistency between thought and reality. A system does not begin with setting goals. It begins with identifying what matters most in one's life, and from there, designing behaviors that reinforce that priority. For the Stoic, what matters is not the outcome, but the daily practice of virtue. Every system must help a person live closer to their ideals, not just chase external success or recognition. At the heart of every system is repeated habit. Small actions, done intentionally each day, become the pillars of character. No one becomes disciplined simply through strong will. They become disciplined by reducing choice, replacing emotional decision-making with a scheduled behavior, and refusing to negotiate with themselves when emotions shift. The simpler and more actionable the system, the more sustainable it becomes. Starting a personal system can begin with small daily rituals, waking up at the same time each morning, not checking the phone immediately upon rising, spending a few minutes journaling or meditating. These actions create a stable psychological pattern where the day begins not in chaos, but with clear intent. A controlled start influences behavior throughout the day, reducing impulsiveness and enhancing rational response. Beyond morning rituals, the system should include a structured work routine. Time for deep work, time for learning, time for physical movement, and time for rest. All must be planned intentionally, not to restrict, but to liberate from chaos and whimsical decision-making. When everything has its order, the mind is freed from trivial choices and can focus on what truly matters. An effective system must also eliminate distractions. Stoicism teaches that nothing weakens a person more than being pulled in every direction by external influences. Social media, phone notifications, unnecessary conversations, all can break focus and pull the mind away from reason. In a disciplined personal system, every source of distraction must be identified, managed, or removed. Additionally, for a system to function smoothly, it must include time for reflection. Journaling, a habit of Marcus Aurelius, serves not just to record events, but to evaluate whether we lived in line with our ideals. Each evening, a few written lines. What went well? What didn't? What emotions took control? What reactions lacked reason? These help make the system a closed loop, where actions are not only executed, but continuously refined. Another core part of the system is the intentional encounter with hardship. Stoicism does not build systems to avoid adversity, but to prepare for it. Practicing premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of misfortune, is part of training the mind to act rightly in all circumstances. When a system has been tested and rehearsed in difficulty, it becomes a sturdy shield that keeps one grounded amid upheaval. The system must also account for an environment that supports it. A person living in the disorder will struggle to maintain disciplined systems. Therefore, organizing your living space, curating the people around you, and reducing temptations are essential. A personal system is not just repeated behavior. It is a full architecture of space, time, people, and habits, all aligned toward a life rightly lived. In the Stoic system, one principle is always emphasized: control what is within your control. When the system focuses on actions within reach, scheduling, responses, routines, then external outcomes, however unpredictable, cannot shake your foundation. A person rooted in a solid system is not easily disturbed by events because their identity is grounded in action, not results. A system cannot be built in one day, but every day is part of the system. And if carried out with intent, consistency, and no compromise, that system will gradually replace fleeting emotion with a way of living that is rational, effective, and ethical. Every small action becomes the foundation for a greater life. Inspiration is not needed to begin, only a clear schedule, a clean space, and a steadfast purpose. Then the system will guide you toward what is right. Ultimately, the system is not confinement. It is liberation. When a person is no longer pulled by emotions, when every action flows from initiative rather than reaction, when each day is shaped by inner principles rather than outer circumstances, that is the mark of a truly self-governed life. Day 7. Fortifying the new self. Protect the person you are becoming. True transformation doesn't occur on the first day when excitement is high. It doesn't happen on the second day when action begins. Real change takes place on the seventh day, when the initial emotions have settled, when motivation has faded, and when the old self starts trying to return. The final day of this journey is not an ending, but a reminder that change only matters if it's sustained. And to sustain it, one must fortify a new self, grounded, deliberate, and resistant to being swept away by circumstance. Stoicism teaches that one does not become someone in a moment, but through a series of consistent actions. The self, or more precisely identity, is not innate. It is formed by thousands of small choices each day. Every time you choose to confront instead of avoid, to act instead of delay, to remain disciplined instead of indulging, you cast a vote for the person you aim to become. Conversely, every concession, compromise, or return to the old ways is a step backward into your own shadow. Fortifying the new self requires ongoing awareness of your inner direction. On the seventh day, the task is no longer about a specific action, but about clearly recognizing who you are choosing to become and beginning to live in alignment with that identity in the smallest details of a daily life. This is the time to craft a personal declaration, not for others, but for yourself. In it, you must answer three core questions. Who am I? What do I stand for? What will I no longer tolerate? Once this new identity is defined, the next step is to build protective boundaries around it. No one can live by their values without a supportive system and environment. Habits, routines, relationships, and living spaces all must be realigned to support the person you are becoming. This doesn't require perfection, but it does demand consistency. Every small compromise is a breach in your inner fortress, and if left unchecked, it becomes the opening through which the old self returns. A key tool in fortifying the new self is the practice of daily reflective journaling. Stoicism never separates reflection from action. Each day, time must be taken to ask, how did I act today? Did anything deviate from my core values? Did I respond with reason, or was I ruled by emotion? These questions are not for self-judgment, but to keep the mind alert and resistant to unconscious regression. As Marcus Aurelius once did, writing your thoughts helps ensure you stay aligned with your principles. Along the way, the old patterns will attempt to resurface. They don't return as obvious intrusions, but through moments of fatigue, discouragement, or loneliness. One morning you wake up late. One evening you skip your meditation. One day you find an excuse to delay your work. Any of these can be the start of a retreat. But if the new self is your only way forward, then these missteps are temporary, not signs to turn back. What matters is not being flawless, but returning to your path as quickly as possible. Fortifying the new self also means learning to say no to what no longer fits. Relationships that pull you toward old habits, tempting but pointless invitations, activities that drain your time and energy, all must be reconsidered. A person rebuilding themselves cannot stay embedded in an old system and expect new results. Each time you say no to a misaligned path, you say yes to yourself. That resolve becomes a strong layer of defense for the identity you're shaping. At the same time, this fortification requires a simplification of life. The new self needs space to grow. A chaotic schedule, cluttered environment, or scattered mind all threaten to pull you back into your former patterns. Therefore, day 7 is not about doing more, but about subtracting the unnecessary and prioritizing what truly sustains you. Stoicism has always prized simplicity, for in simplicity, we can focus fully on what matters most. Another essential factor in maintaining the new self is the perseverance of small daily actions. You don't need grand gestures to preserve growth. Simply waking up on time, training at the scheduled hour, holding your tongue when anger rises, acting when it's called for. Each of these is a quiet reminder that you no longer live as before. Each repeated action is another hammer strike securing the structure of your new identity. And over time, that structure becomes inseparable from who you are. You cannot declare transformation complete just because 7 days have passed. But if, over these 7 days, you've repeatedly chosen the right thing, become more deeply self-aware, and begun to train both body and mind, then you are no longer the person you were. You've laid the foundation for a life of intention, reason, and resilience against emotional impulse. The new self is not given. It is built, and it must be defended. Fortifying the new self is a lifelong commitment. Each day is a test. Each action is a statement. No one else can live your life for you, and no one else can undo the person you're becoming unless you allow it. So day 7 is not the finish line. It's a reminder that from this moment forward, you will live as the person you've chosen to be. After all that I've experienced, the most important lesson I've learned is this: change doesn't come from breakthroughs, but from deliberate repetition. There was no miraculous morning that turned me into a new person overnight, but there were tiny moments, like when I got up to train, even though my body wanted 10 more minutes in bed. Like when I turned off my phone notifications to stay focused. Like when I stayed silent instead of reacting emotionally. Those moments, repeated daily, slowly changed how I saw myself. I used to wait for inspiration to act. Used to believe I needed a big enough reason to begin. But when I started living like a Stoic, no longer chasing emotions, no longer clinging to outcomes, I realized strong will is born from simple, consistent, and correct action. Maintaining the habit of journaling, keeping my space tidy, setting a clear schedule. These may seem small, but they are the very foundation that kept me steady during the most chaotic times. Applying Stoic philosophy isn't about living dryly. It's about living with intention. And the beautiful truth is, anyone can begin from anywhere. You don't need to change the entire world. You only need to start with how you respond to the world, day by day. The 7-day journey isn't a short-term challenge. It's the beginning of a renewed relationship with yourself. Not through words, but through concrete action. You've moved through each day, not to be seen by others, but so that even you would no longer recognize who you were yesterday. If you found meaning in this journey, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss future content on inner strength and grounded living. And finally, remember, you don't need to become someone else. You only need to become the version of yourself that you'd be proud to name in silence. See you in the next video.